Okay, we gotta go. We gotta go. Okay, I almost. And I should have checked to see what the song was when we did this before. I'll talk about that in a second. But hey, everybody, this is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
hey, congratulations. That's the 100th time I think we said that, right?
There we
And I
go.
should have seen what song we played that on our first podcast. I'm sure I have it somewhere. But anyway, 100 shows. Congratulations. I have a Carvel sheet cake coming over your way later. So you guys can go pick it up. So Kenny, how you doing?
It's good. It was a good weekend here in Cleveland.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
well, I don't know. Obviously, still a pain point, but Spido was introduced yesterday.
Ugh,
Um, but also
yes.
the Guardians swept, the Browns won. People are excited here. Oh, the Buckeyes also won too. So
But
big weekend.
yeah, it was, and you know Ohio. This is it almost looks like Cleveland is coming back around. But I wanted to start with a couple of quick stories, and we do hit, even though we're positive tip, right? We do hit those social stories that cross over into sports, and we've got two big ones that's happened this week, and maybe we have so much other stuff to get to, so maybe we'll take more time next week as these unfold and we can get a little bit more into them. So I got to ask you this, man. What is wrong with Brett Favre? I just, I, I mean, listen, he's Hall of Fame, seems to be an all-around good guy. The state of Mississippi has so many issues, and I feel bad. I think the governor there is probably trying his best, but you have the water issue, and then you've got this. They had COVID was the worst in that state per capita. But then you have this money set aside, and it's funneled to Brett Favre. And at first he denies it, and he's wound up sending back $2 million. But then they uncover, you have great reporters out there. They uncover text messages showing that he knew it all the time where the money was actually coming from. Yet he took it, and it's hard because I think he's probably conflicted because he was using it to build something where kids could play and stuff like that. But um, I don't know, man. What did you think about the whole Brett Favre story?
Well, I'm gonna start out with from from my understanding, the state of Mississippi is like the poorest state in the
Yeah,
country,
yeah,
which means that like they would qualify for the most welfare. But yet Brett Favre is using a lot of that welfare funds to build a volleyball arena for his daughter. It looks bad on so many levels.
yeah.
Um, Not to mention the fact that like we're not talking about some like middle of the line star. Like Brett Favre is like was some people would say he was like the best quarterback during his era.
Yeah,
Maybe
oh
not
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
not the best, but definitely like top 5 guy that was always there,
yeah.
threw a ton of touchdowns, won a Super Bowl. Like he's made a lot of money in his career. And it's really hard to hear that cuz like you never want to see like someone that's taking their position and authority and using it in a bad way. We've talked a lot about it with Deshaun Watson and a lot of
Yeah.
the other people that like they use that abusive power in a very negative light. Um, but what's interesting is I was watching a reaction video towards this, and something that was mentioned is like this isn't the only thing that Brett Favre's ever done. Remember the whole issue with the
Yeah,
sexual harassment stuff with the
yeah,
Jets. Um, just like and even when he was as a player towards the end of his career as a Packer, it was the I'm retiring, I'm not retiring, I'm retiring, I'm not retiring, trade
yeah,
me, you better not start Aaron Rodgers, blah 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 blah. And
yeah.
I don't know, it kind of when you look at because like growing up, Brett Favre is like one of like the first like quarterbacks like I remember really, really well.
The star.
Um
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
like the star. Like Tom Brady, like just as I was getting into football too, Tom Brady was there and Peyton Manning. But like Brett Favre was a little bit ahead of them. And it just kind of puts a little bit of a stain on to me on his legacy that like, yeah, like he was a really good football player. But maybe you kind of look at it with with like a longer perspective. Maybe he isn't the best of guys anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you hit on a couple of great points there, and it certainly has come back up. That was the first thing that came into my mind was the picture that he sent to the Spanish reporter for the Jets when this happened when he was with the Jets, and he denied it at first, and she said, "Okay, he's going to deny it. Let me show you that it came from his number." And then he couldn't deny it anymore, and he wound up getting a pretty hefty fine, if I remember right, from the NFL. And this he kind of denied at first as well, but then he couldn't, and he started sending money back. But the other point you made is that I would guess that he's made a lot of money, and do you really need the state to fund this for you? I mean, he couldn't afford to like build a stadium on his own, or you know, or at least get other like private backers and stuff like that. It's just a strange story, and it's you know, you put it in perspective with what's happening in that state right now, and how it is the poorest, you know, in the country. um that every penny, I think, should go to where it should go. I would think, you know, but I it's head scratching. It really is.
yeah.
It's just a head scratcher.
I'll add this last point here. His net worth, I just Googled it. You know, sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. $100 million.
Yeah.
Um, we're not talking about like a new football, like NFL arena. Like, you telling me you couldn't afford to foot some of the bill there, and also like if you're doing it in a charitable way, it's right offable. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, and people will donate to that, you know. And so it's head scratching, but maybe just as head scratching as Robert Sarver, the owner of the Phoenix Suns, who now gets suspended for the year. And I went back this morning to read the original article because it was ESPN that kind of broke this story, and how awful some of the things are that he said and did. And so let me ask you a question, because it seems conflicting to me with him, because he's got African American general manager James Jones. Several years ago, he had the first openly gay general manager, and obviously he's got Monty Williams as a coach, who is probably, I'm sure there's a lot more Christians in the NBA that maybe aren't as outspoken, but Monty Williams, especially from some of the things that he's been through, has been pretty outspoken about his faith. And then you've got, you know, all around good guys like Chris Paul and Devin Booker on that team. Yet it's almost like he, you know, wanted to like ruin such a good thing. And the language that he used was just awful, and intimidation and things against women, using the N-word and stuff like that. And he also at first denied everything, and then he cooperated with the investigation, and he remembered a lot of stuff that he may have forgotten. Now, I will say some of this stuff is from a long time ago, you know, 10, 12 years ago, you know, when Earl Watson was the coach, and a few others. But so my question to you though is, do you think, based on what the commissioner knew, do you think the penalty was harsh enough? And the reason why I'm asking that is because in 2014, Donald Sterling got his team yanked away from him. And Adam Silver has been very outspoken in saying that he just didn't have the right to do that to Sarver, but it's been done before. And Sterling's was awful, right? But it was a recorded phone conversation, and then a lot of other things came out against African Americans. So do you think the penalty was stiff enough for Robert Sarver?
Um, I was thinking about when you asked this question, I was thinking about the Donald Sterling issue too, because remember at first he was gonna fight it really hard, like
Yeah.
lawsuit and everything. Um, but yeah, like I think maybe it isn't harsh enough. Chris Paul, who obviously is a big leader in that locker room, a big part of that team, big part of the reason why they made it to the finals last year. He went out and tweeted like, "Yeah, I don't think this is harsh enough for him."
Yeah.
Which, like, for a guy like that to be that outspoken about it, like, that tells me that he either knows something or was told something from someone he trusts. Like,
Yeah.
um, I think maybe it's a little harder to like because there wasn't the hard evidence of that recording. Maybe that's why, and they're a little worried that like this is more of like the he said she said, and they don't want to set that precedent.
Yeah.
But also, like, more in the NBA than the other sports. Like, first of all, it's a very player driven league. Um, but secondly, there's a lot more black athletes in the NBA as opposed to the other two sports. I
Yeah.
believe a majority of NBA coaches are black too. Um, so like it's something that you kind of can't mess around with. Like, I think in particular in the NBA, if there's the issue of race, if there's the issue with women, like the NBA is just going to look at it a lot differently than baseball would or than football would. Um, I think maybe the penalty should be a little stiffer, but also I don't know. I kind of like with Donald Sterling. I know that was a very that was a precedent that they were worried about. I think forcing him to sell the team might be a little much, but like I don't know, maybe saying you gotta like you're not allowed anywhere near your team for a year
Right.
and very limited interactions over the next couple. And with that, like if we hear of anything, you're gone. Because
Yeah.
I feel like having kind of that like if talking in like a retail world, like your final written warning, like this is it. You do something
Right.
else, then you're
Right.
gone.
Right.
And I don't know if that's been set, but also like he would be dumb to do anything else. So at that point, he
Uh,
would deserve to succeed.
I mean, really, yeah. I mean, and despite that, the Suns have been a very, very successful organization over the years. He's owned them for a long time. You hit on something that is interesting that I hadn't thought about. Is Sterling? Yeah, it was a hardcore tape. He couldn't deny it. It was him on the other end, and it was also a bad look too, right? I think that was his mistress, and she happened to be black, and it was a really really odd situation that I think the NBA wanted to get far away from. Sorry, you're right. It's been he said she said. There's nothing on tape with him, and I think that it's the age old question. The first thing that I think that got him in trouble was him saying that if Draymond Green can you know, go around on the court and saying the N word. He said, "Why can't I say it?" And but he actually said the word. And so I've always stood on the side of I'm never using the word, right? And so I don't think anybody should, black, white, whatever.
Same.
And so I know you've always felt the same way too, but um the coach at the time was saying, yeah, you definitely can't use it, and he continued to use it, but he gets away with he kind of explained, I shouldn't say get away with, but he was explaining it away, saying he was just repeating what Draymond Green was saying. So it's an awful situation. It really is, because apparently there were women that he made cry. Um, Now he overpays, and so he used that also. That hey, I pay you a lot of money to put up with me is one of the things that he said, that he denied saying at first, but as they did the investigation, to his credit, he cooperated with the investigation, and there were a lot of things that he denied at first. But when he was denying it at first, he was saying it's a long time ago. I don't really remember, but his recollection, I guess, came back. When it becomes a legal thing like that. So I think I think it's hard for me to say this, but I think that Adam Silver did the right thing here. I think that having more conversations, about this is better than just sending the guy away. I mean, Donald Sterling was also like, I think he was in his early 80s at the time. He had owned that team forever, and they were terrible forever. They had just started to get good. That was when they got Blake Griffin, and they had just started to get good then. And having the guy on tape, but apparently, so much came out about that, because he was the ironic part with him. He had one of the first black general managers, and that was Elgin Baylor and Elgin Baylor was their GM for years. And so it's just an odd situation. And sometimes, that power corrupts, right? And but anyway, I think we'll talk more about these as they unfold a little bit more in the next week, particularly the Brett Favre one, because I have a feeling this is not the end of that one. I think that the Sarver one is going to kind of go away, because the NBA is going to want it to go away and want him to go away for a bit. I think, opening night, they'll probably ask some of the Suns about it, or when they're, opening training camp or whatever. But I think after that,
Preseason.
yeah, preseason, I think it'll go away. So let's get more on the positive tip now, right? Because you got Eli Manning jersey back there. So I'm gonna give you plenty of time here. I was texting you, man. I could not believe what was unfolding with the Giants and Titans. I'm like, there was just something in my gut, like within that last 5 minutes, I was like, I think the Giants are going to win this game because they were just making play after play after play. And Barkley was playing like he was 4 years ago. So a huge upset, great way to start the season. I'm going to ask you this first and then give you plenty of time to go ahead and sum up the game. What did you think about going for the win and not the tie?
Um, I feel like that's become kind of the newer trend. I know, was it the Chargers that had did that last year, the Raiders as well,
Yeah.
um, where you're going for two as opposed to just going for the tie. Part of me likes that because also sometimes, as we saw also with a couple games yesterday, that like or on Sunday, the ties can be really long. Overtime can
Uh,
just kind of look like it's dragging on. So
yeah.
like, fine, just go for it. Go for the win. Um, I think it's also a very gutsy play because think about if it didn't work
Uh,
and how much everyone on WFAN would be
oh,
ranting and
yeah.
just totally upset at going for that on going for the 2 pointer. Like it would be a bad look for Dayball in his debut. It would be bad all over. But I think it works out because obviously, like, I mean, hindsight is 2020, but also you look at a team like the Titans, it kind of makes sense because Derrick Henry can kind of first of all, he can really just march down the field. Although the Giants were doing pretty well against the rush. Um, and like, especially you're talking about an overtime with a really good running back, they can really eat up a lot of that clock. So even if they don't score, you might not have a chance to respond. So I totally get the call. I think it's a good gutsy move. It looks like this team already has a little bit more juice than they've had the last couple years.
No
Um,
question.
because like they were in a lot of games last year. Like remember, they almost beat Kansas City last year. They almost
Yeah.
beat Tampa, I believe.
Yeah.
Like they were in a lot of really close games, but it seemed like you were just looking for that mistake to happen where the shoe was going to drop and like you just knew that something was going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Um so I don't know if it's fully just a coaching thing. I don't know if it's a we're we're kind of fighting for our regular playing time rights. Like you look at Barkley, he's kind of playing for a contract. Daniel Jones is kind of in the same boat. Like maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm pleased. I'm excited to see what they're going to do this week against Baker and the Panthers. I can talk more on them in a second if you want.
Yeah.
Um, but I think especially if this team starts out 2-0, you'll kind of start to see like a wait, maybe we're that team. Because I texted you this earlier, except for 2 seasons, I want to say 15 and 19. Since 2002, when they went to 4 divisions, there's always been at least one team that's gone from 4th place to 1st place the next year.
Yeah.
The Giants were in 4th place. Maybe they're that team. Now, they
Maybe.
probably
Yeah.
wouldn't be the,
Yeah.
like you look at a team, probably the Ravens would be that team or the Broncos might be that team. But I mean, there's always that team that kind of comes out of nowhere that you're like, wait, where did they come from? You look at
Yeah.
the rest of the division, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited this week. And this is the first time the Giants have been over 500 in 6 years.
Oh my God.
So
Want to know?
it's yeah,
um,
I'll take
but
it.
it's this is also one of the reasons why even early season NFL is so much fun because when you go 0-2, 0-3, it's panic time. You could start off in baseball 0-5, 0-8. NBA gets hard also to make up games, but baseball, in a week you could be right back to where you are. In football, man, it's really hard. So you've got some teams that'll be panicking, playing extra hard this week, so they don't go 0-2. So aside from Barkley, what else stood out for you on the Giants team? Their defense.
Yeah. I think at times their defense just looked like, oh, let's just let them score. I feel like they did really well, especially like Derrick Henry holding the rush. I
Yeah.
don't know the stat, but like I think they ranked the Giants defense second based on
Wow.
metrics, performance, and
Yeah.
stuff out of all the teams last week. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it does look different. And also that's without Thibodeau, who will be back a couple weeks. So I don't know. There's a little bit of juice.
Yeah.
And also the offensive line looked really good.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's been a point of reconstructing over the last couple of years, but when you have a good back and you have a decent offensive line, like things can happen. That's what happens
Yeah.
with the Browns all the time.
It seems like they struggled with the offensive line for so many years, and it looks like they finally have it straight. I mean, they've drafted well there too, on the offensive line. So, yeah. So we'll get to next week in a second. I'll just give 2 seconds on the Jets. I was enormously disappointed. Um, listen, the Ravens are a really good team, and they just went through that really bad streak last year, and they didn't get to the playoffs last year. But I can't see them not being back this year. They've got so much talent. Lamar Jackson is just all world. He also is playing for a contract. So um I think that the Jets coach needs to. He's such a positive guy, but he needs to he can't say, "Oh, I'm taking receipts. We're gonna be back." Yeah, just keep quiet. Just get some wins on the board here. I'm really disappointed that Joe Flacco did not play better. I think that that was the key. I thought that you've heard me say this a few times now. I think the Jets finally, again, have some playmakers on that team, particularly at wide receiver and particularly on the defense. I think the secondary, they've loaded that back up. It was a shame to me, a tragedy that they traded Jamal Adams a few years ago, but now they've got some guys I think that can make some plays, and I think CJ Mosley is going to develop into one of the best linebackers in the NFL. So they've got the makings of some things here, but man, oh man, that quarterback position is so important. And Flacco, I was stunned at his lack of efficiency, and because he was getting some of the protection that he needed. He was just overthrowing people. It was just weird. It was almost like he hadn't played in a few years, but he's played, and I know he's 37 now. So I guess I have to take that into consideration. And the Jets really don't have anywhere else to go. And that's the GM's fault, in terms of backup quarterback. So it was a disappointing loss. To an extent, it felt like same old Jets, but I am optimistic still. I do know it's early, but you go 0-2, 0-3, it get as the late great Yogi Berra says, right? It gets late early. So, all right, let me fire off. I just jotted down.
Can I
Oh, go
ask?
ahead. Yeah, yeah.
First, there is a big news that just dropped here.
Oh, breaking
Another
news.
great tennis player has announced his retirement. Roger Federer. He's
Federer's
going to play
retiring.
in
Wow,
his last tournament next week, and
wow.
he's calling it a career. So,
That is
um,
breaking news. Yeah, that is breaking news. Federer has been unbelievable. He's had
yeah,
quite a career. Again, you and I are kind of novice tennis fans, but we know the big names, and he's been unbelievable. So we'll got to recap him and Serena maybe next week, because those
yeah.
are huge losses, to the tennis world. So we got to see some new stars rise up though. Um, Monday night, were you surprised that Geno Smith and Seattle outplayed Russell Wilson and the Broncos? It's a close game. Now they didn't go for it. They still had 6 minutes left, and they were deep in the red zone, and they kept getting stopped down there, Denver. I mean, they were moving the ball well, and they didn't go for it on fourth down at about 1 or 4th and 2, something like that. They went for the field goal, which just got them, to within, made it 17-16. And so unlike, the Giants, they didn't go all in, down there. But a new coach also, I think he felt like there was plenty of time they would get the ball back. So did that surprise you that Seattle knocked off Denver?
Yes, it did. It's kind of interesting because I have the learning center kids. We're learning about football, learning fantasy football. So on Monday afternoon, I had them I had them choose which team they thought was going to win. So one of my groups picked the Seahawks, the other picked the Broncos. So then on Tuesday, we watched like the highlight video that the NFL drops on YouTube. So like watching the kids' reaction throughout the game was a lot of fun. Um, but also it was just very interesting because it was twice that the Broncos fumbled the ball within like the 5 yard line.
Yeah,
And
they just kept getting
that's
stopped in the red zone.
huge.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but also when you have a quarterback that you're paying over $200 million that you traded a bunch of draft picks for, and you're asking a rando kicker, it doesn't even matter who, to hit a 64-yard field goal, you give the ball to your star quarterback.
yeah.
Um,
I
because
agree.
then like, because even if he misses it, because I mean, 4th and 5, like you never know what can happen.
Yeah,
But like at least you can say, well, I gave it to my star quarterback. I wasn't gonna have my kicker try to kick a 64-yard field goal would have been like one of the
yeah.
top 5 field goals in like league history. So
When
I don't
when
get
he
that.
lined up, I was like, does the coach think they're playing in Denver? Where there's a really good chance of making a field goal like that in the light air, or does he know he's playing in Seattle? I was surprised. I was surprised at that. Were you surprised that Russell Wilson got booed? Because he didn't ask for a trade.
No, I thought he did. I thought he had asked for one.
I thought he didn't, but I'm probably I could be I'm sure I'm wrong there. But still, do you boo him? I mean, he took him to 2 Super Bowls.
I'm surprised they booed him.
Yeah,
Because also like it wasn't even necessarily like I felt like he was getting a little uncomfortable with the way Seattle was going anyway.
yeah,
Like kind of similar to Tom Brady, although it worked out very nicely for Tom Brady. Like it seemed like the coach was starting to get a little bit out of touch with the way the league was going.
yeah,
Wasn't really giving him the weapons he needs to succeed. So he wanted to go to a place that he could go. So I'm a little surprised because like Seattle would have nothing without Russell Wilson. He
yeah,
has been the franchise player for the last decade. So
yeah.
like I don't get it either.
I was surprised, and I always thought they had great fans there, but I was surprised. Okay, um, and all right, surprised that the Packers got smoked.
Um yes and no, because that also did happen last year.
Last year.
They
Yeah.
got was it by the Saints? They lost by like 30.
Yeah.
So like that's a little surprising to me, but also it might say more about Minnesota. Um, you could argue that Justin Jefferson had the best week 1 out of everyone. You
Yeah.
could argue Saquon, you could argue Patrick Mahomes, but he also put up a great show. He outgained the entire Packers offense in the first half.
Wow.
But also like I think it is a little bit of a red flag for Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is used to having those guys, whether you're talking Devontae Adams years ago with the Jordy Nelsons of the world. He doesn't really have that this year. He has a lot
Yeah.
of rookies, got a lot of young guys. And I think like Aaron Rodgers doesn't necessarily like to play nicely with people he doesn't know. And I think that might come back to bite him
Yeah.
because like kind of like what you said, if they start out 0-2, if they start out 0-3, like it's gonna get late early. Now, granted, the NFC to me is still very wide open, but still, you don't want to start out 0-3. You really don't want to start out 0-4. 0-4, I think, is like
Uh,
no one ever wins the Super Bowl if they start out 0-4.
yeah. All right. Surprised that Tampa had their way with Dallas, and unfortunately, the Dak injury.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more surprising ones because Dallas looked like a very good team, but
Yeah.
even before Dak got hurt, they still looked awful.
I,
They
yeah.
are the only team that didn't score a touchdown
Yeah.
all week.
Yeah.
So,
They didn't look like they were ready to play, which was hard to believe. Um, the Steelers, last minute, beating Cincinnati. Surprised?
that one surprised me.
Yeah.
You always worry about like the Super Bowl teams if they're gonna like have a hangover in the next year. I think I mentioned this before. The last 16 quarterbacks that lost in their Super Bowl debut never made it back. The last one would be Jim Kelly of the Bills. So it's been a lot of guys like Cam Newton, Colin Kaepernick,
Yeah.
Joe Flacco won it. Who's the other one? Oh, Jimmy G hasn't made it back.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
This goes on.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Collins is in there too. Um,
Yeah.
so you do wonder if like they've already hit their ceiling, but also
Yeah.
it is week one. I think that says a lot about the Steelers. Their defense is still really, really good. And Mitch Trubisky isn't a horrible quarterback. So
No. And I think the Steelers are going to be a little loosey goosey this year because, Roethlisberger Hall of Fame. He's going to march right into the Hall of Fame with his championships and, and all of the things that he did, taking nothing away from him. But probably the last 5, 6 years, he's extremely immobile. And I think that, you'll get a guy like Trubisky in there and Tomlin's going to open that offense up. So I think the Steelers might be a surprise team. You spoke about Jimmy G. Were you surprised that the Bears spanked the Niners and the Bears young quarterback played great and the Niners young quarterback was horrible?
that one surprised me too.
Yeah,
Um, I think maybe Trey Young is getting hype. Well, not Trey Young, Trey Lance, wrong
Trey
Trey.
Lance.
Um, I think maybe there's a little bit of extra hype with him, but that team also has a really good roster. But you worry about the quarterback.
Yeah.
Jimmy G, I know he's got limitations, but the guy always wins. And there that has to account for something.
If he's on the team, he should be playing. I mean, come on. Listen. I know you want to develop your young quarterback here, and Lance is probably going to be good. I don't know. No one knows, but we know what Garofalo brings to the table. So I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I imagine that coach is probably staking his career on this move here, because I don't know. I wasn't able to trade him. I would just listen. Here's the ball, man. Let's go. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, were you surprised that the Dolphins dominated the Pats?
I think so. Like I kind of figured the Dolphins would win. Like if I'm not the type to like predict by record everyone the way they're gonna finish, but I would probably say the Dolphins finish above the Patriots this year. Um, but I think also like you worry about the Patriots long term. Um, I it's funny having some friends that are Patriot fans and kind of seeing them really get upset throughout the entire game to the point where they're like, "Yeah, I'm turning this off." It was like the third quarter. Um, but I don't know. That's going to be interesting. It kind of seems like Bill Belichick's a little checked out. Don't they still don't technically have an offensive and defensive coordinator?
I don't think so. It's just what you said. Belichick is checked out. Yeah, I don't think so. No, but he's got Matt Patricia right as his defensive guy. He has him back. Forgot he's got also and I'm forgetting who it is, but he's got an experienced offensive guy there too. Is it your guy? His offensive, your ex Giant coach? Didn't he go back
Oh,
there?
Joe Judge.
Yeah. Did
Yeah, I
he
think
go
he is
back?
back there.
Yeah, I listen. I think the Dolphins also are going to surprise some people. All right, let me give you a couple of minutes here because obviously it was must see TV there in Cleveland. Give us a few minutes on the Browns Panthers. Panthers made a ferocious comeback, but the Browns have got something here. So I like that they opened up. That's an amazing coincidence, right? That it was Browns Panthers. So, what was the reaction there? And are people? I would imagine people are excited about the Browns.
Yeah. As I mentioned at the beginning, like it was a good weekend for the Guardians. They swept the Twins and kind of retook control of the division a little bit, but still, like that was completely overshadowed by the Browns winning. This is hardcore. This Brown City, like if you
Oh,
don't root for the
clearly,
Browns, get
yeah,
out.
no doubt,
Um,
yeah,
but like I think what's interesting is kind of looking at it from the opponent's perspective. Like you kind of saw what Baker Mayfield typically is. He's a guy that like he gets really fired up and like can give you an excellent half or an excellent game. But then other times it's like head scratching moves. Like there's a couple throws I know like and also the Browns really did a good job of like playing to what they know are his weaknesses. Like they kept tipping balls, they kept getting in his face, putting the good amount of pressure. Miles Garrett had a couple sacks in there. But what it kind of seems like is he played awful in the first half, but had a really good second half. But then like that comeback came just short.
yeah.
Um, But really, like what carried this team and what's going to carry them until Deshaun Watson gets back is the running game. Both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb were excellent.
Yeah.
And really, like I think that's kind of the formula for success. Like base it off the running game, and then Jacoby Brissett just don't throw an interception.
Right.
And I think like
Right.
that's kind of the formula that can give you success. Like Brissett's had some success as a starter. He hasn't had a lot of time, but he's been pretty good. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
they play the Jets this weekend, so that'll be
Well,
interesting.
yeah. So let's I have that here. So let's jump in. And so I think listen, I think the Browns are a Super Bowl contender. So it's so interesting. I think now it's so funny because now both those teams, Browns and Panthers, are playing our teams this week. So Jets have any shot here of beating the Browns?
I think the only way you could stop him is stop the running game. It's interesting because it's a bunch of backup quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I worry about Joe Flacco in that game
Yeah.
because especially like
Myles
getting the
Garrett.
pressure on him.
Yeah.
Myles
Yeah.
Garrett,
Yeah.
Jadeveon Clowney also can kind of give you a little
Yeah.
bit of issues there. So
They've got
that
some
would be
beat.
probably one of the biggest issues.
They blitz
So
Flacco, man. He's not going anywhere. Yeah, I
yeah,
want obviously I'm rooting for the Jets. It's hard for me to pick them to beat Cleveland this week. I'll be rooting hard. Brissett it is hard to say this, right? Brissett at this point in his career is a better quarterback than Flacco. And I just think that without that seamlessness at quarterback for the Jets, they're going to struggle here early. And I'm not sure they're going to get that seamlessness from Wilson either when he comes back. I don't know. It's hard to kind of see past. This has been a while since we've really had a really really strong quarterback, and so I don't know. But the Browns seem to fire on all cylinders. They held on. They made the plays they needed to make towards the end of that game. So I think it's going to be a good game, but I think it's hard for me to pick the Jets over Cleveland right now. I think the Giants will beat the Panthers. I think Baker will have a great game again. And is their big weapon? Is he healthy? McCaffrey.
McCaffrey. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the other thing too. I feel like they didn't use him enough. It's like I watched pretty much the whole game, and it seemed like McCaffrey didn't get the ball that much. And I feel like when Baker had the most success was when he was using his running backs and kind of going off of the play action. That was kind of his that was his bread and butter.
Yeah. You got to he's got to touch the ball at least 25, 30 times. Yes. I would think for them to win. So I would imagine you're picking the Giants. Yes.
Yeah, I'm picking the Giants. I might as well. I'm ride or die at this point. So
all right. And real quick, the big 4 o'clock. I have a quick Monday night question to ask you. The big 4 o'clock game, Cincy at Dallas. That is 4:25. I always still say 4 o'clock because it was 4 o'clock for years, but 4:25, Cincy at Dallas. Two teams a little bit desperate. Who you liking there?
I like Cincy there.
Okay.
I think, well, first of all, Cooper Rush is starting for Dallas, so big quarterback advantage with Joe Burrow there. I think also Cincy, they see the Ravens at possibly 2-0. The Browns and the Steelers could also be 2-0 feasibly. So I think they're like, let's we got to win this weekend because if you fall 2 games back and haven't played a division game yet, that's gonna be tough, especially in AFC North like that. So
yeah. Okay.
Also, I think Dallas is already kind of writing the season, unless you see like them trade for a guy like a Gardner Minshew or Jimmy Garoppolo or someone like that. But I don't think they're gonna do that.
Andy Dalton's not on the team anymore. On Dallas?
I don't think so. Let me look it up.
Okay. All right. While you're looking that up, on Monday night, in my opinion, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were fantastic. It's no knock on the other announcers, but I think Monday night was always built for like the big announcers, like Al Michaels and John Madden and Al Michaels obviously did that for years, Monday Night Football before he went to Sunday night, and now you got Joe Buck and Aikman back in there. They sounded perfect on Monday night. I felt I didn't catch any of the Manning cast. I'm sure they were great as well. But I have to ask you this: oh, did you catch them?
Um, I saw a clip of Peyton Manning like cringing when they weren't calling a timeout in the last minute.
Oh
That was
boy,
funny.
yeah,
He's like, "Oh my gosh, I would have called a timeout right here. Why are you not calling a timeout?" And he's like, "Oh gosh," it
yeah.
was really funny.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I watched all of Buck and Aikman on their first go around the next week, which I don't think they'll be on this week. So that's why I wanted to ask you. They're doing, and ESPN is doing this a few times. That's why they kept the other team intact, which I think, except for Brian Greasy, I think he got replaced by Orlovsky, Dan Orlovsky for I might not be pronouncing his last name right, but they have several double headers, but they're odd double headers. They have one game starting at 7 and another one at 8:15. So it's like they really overlap each other, and they're both really good games actually, if I remember right, this Monday night. And but they're doing that. They're doing that a couple of times, right? What are the matchups on Monday night?
7:15 is Titans Bills.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Um,
Yeah,
and then Vikings Eagles is at
Vikings
8:30.
Eagles. The Eagles held on to win, right? And obviously the Vikings spanked the Packers. Those are two really good games, and I think Aikman and Buck are doing the later game. But like they
That one's
overlap
on. Yeah, they overlap about an hour. The Vikings Eagles later one is on ABC.
on ABC.
So I think that's kind of the
Yeah.
draw, getting ABC kind of back in the mix a little bit.
Yeah. It's an odd mix. That I mean, why wouldn't you start that game later so that people could see both games? There's gonna be a lot of people with like split screens, watching, the two games on Monday night, which is odd. All right. That's a good deal on football. Let's shift to baseball. We're at about 42 minutes, so we got about 18 minutes as we hit our hour or so. What a historic season, Kenny. This is shaping out to be, huh? Um,
Yeah.
let's talk about the Yankees first and Aaron Judge. Just I love. Did you like him giving the fan in Boston a high five? She was stunned,
Yeah.
right? She was like, "Oh my gosh!"
That
And she
was
was
awesome.
filming it. That was awesome. Aaron Judge, larger than life, yeah, not just because in size, but larger than life too. Take a few minutes on the Yankees, because they had a huge week.
Yeah, it kind of you look at the past like week or so. Number one, it looks like health is starting to turn in their favor. Like Stanton had a pretty good few games in Boston. He always kills the Red Sox, which is always fun for me to say. I texted my friends that are Red Sox fans. They're like, "Yeah, no, it's football season." So I was like, it's always fun to mention that the Yankees swept the Red Sox, even if it's 2 games. But it looks like Rizzo will be back this weekend. LeMahieu's probably not that far. Chapman's going to be activated this weekend. Severino should be back. So it looks like a lot of the bigger pieces are coming back, and that's what you want,
Yeah,
especially like with about like 2.5 weeks left in the season. You
yeah,
want
yeah,
you want them to get some reps. You want them to kind of get their feet underneath them before the playoffs start, so then like their first game back isn't division series game or something like that.
yeah,
It was also big this week because Tampa was playing Toronto. So no matter if the Yankees took care of business, the Yankees were gaining ground on somebody. The bullpen, which I think looked really shaky for a little bit, has been really good. The last 9 games, I think they have an ERA of under 1.25 or something like that.
yeah.
So I think that's really big. But man, Aaron Judge, I'm just gonna point out a
Yeah.
couple things with him,
Go ahead. Yeah.
and I'll re-emphasize that I think I understand Shohei Ohtani does like more for his team, but also Shohei Ohtani is doing more for a 4th place team, not the 2nd best team in the league.
Yeah.
So in his last 51 games, not including last night, Aaron Judge is batting .379, .513 on base, .870 slugging, with 47 runs, 26 home runs, and 57 RBIs. That's 51 games played. So he has more RBIs than games played. And this is over like about 2 months. Also, It was the first time since Babe Ruth. I know everyone loves to point out Shohei Ohtani hasn't done stuff since Babe Ruth. Either is Judge. Judge leads the majors in home runs by 20 home runs now. Kyle Schwarber has 37. He has 57. And then also very, very quietly, Judge is batting 310. Right now, the American League leader is oh gosh, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Arraez from the Twins. He's batting 320. Judge is third behind Bogarts and the guy from the Twins. Like it'll still be tough, but is it really that far out of the realm of possibility that this guy can get a triple crown and break the home run record in the same year? If he were to do that, like you're talking about a guy also, he had a series where, and I know they only won one out of the games, but he had a series where he scored all of the Yankees runs, whether it was by home run or being driven in by a single or double or something. He has been a huge part of this team. And it's just a lot of fun to see. This guy is 4 home runs away from a record that stood for 61 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's just crazy.
That was amazing. 61 homers in 1961, and it's 61 years later. Just unbelievable, man, how the stars are aligned for that. I don't have anything to add, man. Judge has just been the only thing I'll add. If anybody else gets the MVP, it's a travesty. And listen, Ohtani is great. You can't give Ohtani the MVP every year just because he does, the pitching, and that team stinks. They would finish in last place they're going to finish in last place with him. They would finish in last place without him. The words of the great Ralph Kiner, I tell you, man, he's just been unbelievable. I think the fact also that he's a large man, makes him kind of larger than life, similar to, the way we looked at Mark McGwire before we knew, right? We looked at Mark McGwire like that, and but he's carrying this team, and it is just great to see. Say a few words about Albert Pujols, and I know you have a little bit of a story you're going to say for inspiration in just a few, but man, he's going to hit 700. Is there any doubt that he'll hit 3 more before the end of the year?
A few weeks ago, I would have said, I think he'll pass A-Rod but come up short, but not anymore. I'm really rooting for it too, because it's also one of those things where I feel like so much of the steroid era has hindered guys hitting that level. But getting 700 home runs is still only something that 3 people have done. And Amazing. One of those 3 were on steroids.
Yeah.
So I think it would be quite the feat. And also kind of like you said, very historic season, because you have Judge, imagine in the same season, you have a guy hitting 700 and then another guy hitting 62. That would be incredible.
At least 62. He's probably going to hit more than that. It's fun to watch. I mentioned to you before we started that FS1 was showing the Cardinals and Brewers have fell off, by the way, as you know. But the way that crowd is into what Albert Pujols is doing is amazing. They're all standing up. Fox, they caught the big moment, right? I think Tom Verducci was the analyst. I didn't recognize who the play-by-play guy was, but they caught the big moment because they spanned the crowd. Everyone had their camera phones out. Everyone was really, really anticipating that, he was going to hit a home run. And he had a Albert Pujols from 10 years ago type double up the gap in left center. It was so nice to see, he's got 18 homers, 50 something RBIs, and he's batting 264. I mean, I would say for a part-time DH, which is what he's been this year, that's spectacular. Just a brilliant move for the Cardinals to bring him back. And obviously it's not going to stop, because the Cardinals are going to be in the postseason. They've got a great record. They probably have the NL MVP with Goldschmidt. I think Austin Riley will give him a run for his money there, but this has just been so much fun. And then Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright last night catching their well over 300th game together, breaking a record of the most times a battery has been together. And I thought that's outstanding. And while Molina hasn't played all that great this year hitting wise, Wainwright's been really good. He's got like a 3.2 ERA. You know what I mean? He's still throwing that curveball, which made him famous for years and years and years. Let me ask you a baseball question. And the Mets and Braves, I'll just say real quick, they both have played so well all season long, and well, the Braves since June, right? That they both were bound to hit a wall here. So I think they'll both pick it back up. The Mets is Roberto Clemente night, as you know. That game's going to be nationally televised, by the way, on Fox. Mets Pirates, and I have a feeling that they're going
Oh.
to retire Clemente's number across baseball as well. I wouldn't be surprised if that's an announcement tonight, but we'll see. Um, Let me ask you this: we're right at 2.5 weeks. We know what teams probably are making the playoffs. The Guardians are obviously, playing well. They're figuring out they got to fight off the White Sox. They put the Twins away this past weekend. Who would you say are the biggest disappointments?
Um, we kind of alluded to them before. I'm going to mention three teams real quick. Um, Number one, the Angels.
Yeah,
I texted you this. Their 82nd loss means that they're going to finish with a losing record for the seventh straight season, longest streak in baseball. Um, the White Sox, they may finish over 500, but a lot of people thought they'd blow away the division again. They
yeah,
haven't.
so good
Unless it's
last.
the Giants.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Oh my gosh! And they did you see the pitcher when Gabe Kapler went to take him out? He got really, really mad and said something over his shoulder to Kapler. They went to dugout, exchanged words, had to be separated. Then the next day, the pitcher was designated for assignment, even though Kapler at the end of the night said, "Yeah, yeah, we hashed everything out. It's all good." But the next day, he said something very interesting. He said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that players are not only responsible for their performance, but they're responsible for their behavior, as well. So he like slept on it and cut him, the next day. Which was this was Zach Littell, I believe his name is. But they a lot of frustration there. 107 games they won last year, and and it looked like they made
yeah,
improvements. They picked up some pitching. I know they lost one of their great pitchers as well, but they picked up Rondon, and I thought they would be just as good, in Battle of Dodgers this year, but it just never panned out. I have the same two of your same teams. I have the Giants and the Angels, but I also have the Red Sox. And I know the Red Sox have had the injuries to the pitching and
yeah.
everything like that, but man, oh man, it seems like they always have good year, bad year, and I'm not sure why that is with them. I thought that when Cora came back, they'd be more consistent. So anyway, what a next couple of weeks is going to wind up being, right? You've got a couple of really good races. You got the wild card going. You got Braves Mets that is probably going to be the one that most people watch because they're both winning a lot of games. The Dodgers already clinched how amazing have they been 9 out of 10 years, winning the division. I mean, they've built quite the dynasty. I know it's just the one championship, but you get to the playoffs every year. It's a big deal. I have no doubt the Mets will be in the playoffs. I just really would like to avoid that wild card round, but it's still going to be hard to hold his Braves team off. But Starling Marte, got to get him back. Scherzer hopefully pitches on Monday, so at least we'll have him back. But Marte was I didn't realize what a big part of the team he's been all year. All right, it's inspiration time, right? Hunter show. We got some inspiration, so I'll go real quick first, and then I want to hear. You have a great story to tell, so I want to lift up Russell Wilson. What a guy to root for. I'm just going to read part of this article real quick because I'm not sure if you saw this, Ken. There was a video, a picture that went viral recently of him and his wife Sierra in church, and he is worshiping on his knees, and she's standing behind him with her hands raised. And a lot of people thought that was in bad taste that people took pictures of them while they were worshiping in church because there were some people that said, "Hey, the person that took the picture, they should just be concentrating on worshiping themselves," But it was quite the opposite for him. His reaction was that he was glad that a lot of people saw it. I'm just going to read some of this real quick. So a photograph of Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson and his wife Sierra worshiping at a local church has gone viral. The Instagram post shows Wilson on his knees while Ciara stands behind him, holding her hands up in praise. When Russell Wilson and Ciara are at your church bowing to Christ, I didn't take the pic. The guy next to me did. I think it's just fire to see. God is so good. It's a guy named Taylor Martin. So some users were quick to respond, liking the image, but others thought it was an invasion of privacy. A picture of CC and Russell praising Jesus in the church is going viral. A couple that prays together stays together. That's what a lot of people wrote. And some people put it's weird, that they took a photo of them while praising Jesus. Wilson and his wife are both devout Christians and have long been outspoken about their faith. Wilson rephrased the scripture from the Bible's New Testament when he accepted the 2020 Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year award in 2020. And we know how prestigious that award is, right? So Wilson was selected from the annual group. He's 31 years old now, of 32 nominees, each from his team for his COVID-19 relief efforts and philanthropy and other charitable organizations. Wilson paraphrased a part of 1 Corinthians 13:4 in this address. To America, to the world, love is patient, love is kind, love changes things. The great Walter Payton once said, we're stronger together than we are alone. Dad, I think Walter was right. To the young boy or girl who has a dream, who wants to make a difference, remember this one thing: love always protects, love always trusts, love always hopes, and love always perseveres. Love changes things. Thank you. And so I just think that the article goes on to say how he came to Christ as a teen and how that's protected him throughout his football career, and how he wants to be an example, for others to be more bold in their faith. There's also, if you Google him, you'll see a relatively recent video of him saying scripture at his locker after a game. He's turned out to be a guy who's very, very easy to root for. I was certainly rooting for him Monday night. I picked the Broncos to go to the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens, because I think if he has the stage again at this later in his career, he'll probably be a little bit more outspoken. But go look at that picture. It is amazing. You'll feel something when you see it. You might have already seen it, but it's very, very recent. He's found a church in Denver that him and his wife, want to go to. But Russell Wilson, he inspired me this week. What you got, man?
All right. Well, I got so Albert Pujols passing A-Rod, home run number 697. The fan who caught the ball went immediately, which I think is awesome in and of itself, because a lot of times people take it and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to sell this and make thousands. But it was a lady and her husband both went and were like, here, we want to give this back. So first, Albert Pujols like, no, you keep it. It's going to mean a lot more to you than it does to me. And then it turns out that big baseball fan this lady's father was passed away just about a year to the day of them catching the ball. So
wow.
He really said that, like, yeah, I can have it in my trophy case, but it'll mean a lot more to them than it will to me. And you're talking about a guy that like he's now number 4 on the all-time home run list. And I think, like, kind of just saying that is very incredible, and it kind of shows the type of character he has. So I was really inspired by that.
Wow. And it probably will, because I think you had mentioned also, is this couple going through a hard time aside from the loss of her father?
I believe so. I have to look it up again, but there was like other challenges in there. So.
That is amazing. And Paul's been pretty outspoken about his faith as well. I know he went through a very, very rough divorce earlier this year, which he said rocked his faith. It really did, but he's been pretty outspoken about his faith as well. Inspiring folks. So Kenny, how's it feel, man, to be 100 years old? I mean, I have 100 shows underneath here. I'm gonna put on the music here on the podcast. It feels pretty good, right? We're probably gonna do at least another 100, if not another 1,000, right?
Yeah. Like, here's to another 100 more.
Here's to another 100 more is right. All right, I got the music going on the podcast part. Kenny, take us home.
All right, this is Kenny Squared N.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Lots to talk about this time of year, right? For sure, 101.